TBD, Justin Hunt, it's all happening. First video on the new channel. We did it. Brooklyn, we did it. Now, just over a month ago, I was invited to debate at the prestigious Oxford Union in the UK. The topic is Kanye West more relevant than William Shakespeare? TBD.
Status selected.
Founded in 1823 as a forum for discussion and debate, the Oxford Union is the world's most prestigious debating society. Malcolm X spoke at the Union demanding black empowerment by any means necessary. Richard Nixon spoke at the Union just after Watergate. He confessed, he said, "I screwed up and I paid the price." British comedian Angelos Epithemiou argued at the Union why size does matter. That debate's about more than what it sounds like, and yet simultaneously about exactly what it sounds like. O.J. Simpson gave his first public speech in Britain following the not guilty verdict. Look at that face. Albert Einstein spoke at the Oxford Union, A$AP Rocky, Bill Maher, Mark Cuban, Michael Jackson, Elton John, Robin Wright. Fallen athletes, political figures, titans of industry all have spoken at the Union. And unlike other student unions, Oxford Union holds no political views. The union believes in freedom of speech, nothing more, nothing less. This unusual debate, whether Kanye West is more relevant than William Shakespeare, is the brainchild of Matthew Cook. Matthew is the assistant to the president of the union and argued for the proposition, meaning he believes Kanye West is more relevant than William Shakespeare. Here's Matthew explaining the origins of this incredible conversation.
The idea for the debate was kind of how do we assess cultural importance? How do we question things? How do we ask? At first we thought, is Kanye this generation's Shakespeare? And then we thought, how do we make that into a debate that we can equate properly and we can consider the implications of what means relevance, what means influence, and where does hip hop versus poetry fit into that kind of question?
What means relevance and what means influence. That's truly the difference maker for this conversation. Relevance is connected to time, to the present. Influence is effect on behavior or character or something else. Kanye West is definitely more viral than William Shakespeare. Most people know more about Ye than Shakes. That's a point that Jensen Karp made during his proposition argument.
Let's try a small exercise using this room as a sample size for the rest of the world. You guys ready? Finish this lyrics. Here's a short one. No one man should have all that. Great, we're good, we're moving on. Here's another. Now, I'm not saying she's a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no, you know what? Don't finish that. Don't finish that one.
Nicely done, Jensen, nicely done. But I think his argument captures how most of us feel about this conversation. How relevant is anyone if most people don't know what they did? Those were my general instincts before I started researching. I was on the opposition, meaning I believe William Shakespeare is more relevant than Kanye West. Before I got into this project, again, I didn't realize that Shakespeare had been translated into 100 languages, including Klingon, which is really weird, but absolutely true. I didn't know that Shakespeare had written 37 plays, 154 sonnets, 4 poems. I didn't realize that he's credited with creating over 1,600 words and that 1 in 10 commonly used phrases came from William Shakespeare. Who knew? The word addiction was created by Shakespeare. That's a Kanye West song. The word champion is credited to Shakespeare. That's also a Kanye West song. The word luggage was created by Shakespeare. Yeezy used to rap about Louis Vuitton luggage. Savagery, Shakespeare. Swagger, Shakespeare created the word swagger. No one on the corner has swagger like us. I didn't realize these things. I do now. What you got to say about that, Matthew Cook?
And we can see that his subversiveness and creativity is far more relevant to us than that of William Shakespeare, whose writing, alongside being dated and often morally questionable, requires a level of literary knowledge that Kanye's verses cut through. Rap is the 21st century's soliloquy, and Kanye's is as devastatingly personal as it gets. I have no doubt that our opposition tonight will emphasize the influence of Shakespeare upon our vernacular, the 1,700 or so of his words in the lexicon. Yet to focus on this is to mistake influence for relevance.
Thanks, Matthew. There went my cold, open Yeezus. What's interesting is that 3/4 of the opposition, Daniel Wilkinson, Anthony Anaxagorou, and myself, we all made some reference or some point about Shakespeare's influence on language and the fact that he's been credited with creating over 1,600 words. Matthew was the first one to speak in the entire debate. He deaded our argument straight out the gate. Word bond. Word is bond. Point for the proposition. Daniel Wilkinson did buzz back like Do or Die and Twista in his argument. He took aim at the idea that Shakespeare's writing is too dated, dense, or elitist to be relevant in 2017. Here's Daniel.
I grew up and still live in Stratford-upon-Avon, having spent all of my life so far surrounded by Shakespeare. Even as a teenager, going to the theatre and watching The Winter's Tale, for example, you don't need to understand every line, letter, or allusion. That doesn't matter. What matters is the raw pain, the visceral emotion caused at the hands of corrupting jealousy. When Hermione suffers a miscarriage, often enacted on stage, you don't have to be a Shakespearean scholar to understand the pain. In Hamlet, the audience witnesses the psychological deterioration of the protagonist after the heartbreaking scenario when your father has been killed by your uncle and then your mother has decided to marry him.
Uncle kills father, then marries mother, Jesus. That's like some grimy slums boxed-in thread or some taboo Pornhub search request. I don't remember any of that when Dr. Lockridge forced us to read Hamlet back in high school. I didn't understand it. It was all in Old English, and I spoke American. I ain't use those words. I ain't get it. Fortunately, we have YouTube now, so I watched Julius Caesar, I watched Macbeth, I watched Hamlet, etc. leading up to this debate, and I finally got it. The storytelling's dope, and I didn't need to understand every Old English article to figure out the post-traumatic stress Hamlet was going through after his uncle killed his father and married his mother. Imagine if that happened to you.
You might have to kill her!
That's an important point to know about the Bard. He wrote plays to be seen, not to be read. That's part of the reason why it sucks so much reading his work back in high school. That's also part of the reason why there's a debate around whether or not Shakespeare wrote the work in which he's credited, because much of his folio wasn't released until 7 years after he passed away. He also wrote plays for the Globe Theater, meaning he wanted everyone in the venue to get a different experience of the same moment, regardless of where they sat. He also wanted that ticket money. Professor Elizabeth Schafer broke this down better than I ever could. She pointed out why Julius Caesar is the most popular play of the moment for theater companies. She also explains why it's more relevant now than ever.
This play shows how a monstrous, old, outspoken, bad-tempered, but indubitably remarkable man is assassinated in order to prevent him from becoming emperor, ruler of one of the greatest world powers in history, a power that colonizes culturally as well as by brute force. I can see why Julius Caesar is the play of the year. Well, Shakespeare, of course, had no thought of Donald Trump when he wrote his play. He was probably thinking more about the experience and challenges of living under the rule of a grumpy, aging queen. I am referring to Queen Elizabeth. But for me, what is really important about Shakespearean relevance is that in order to be relevant, in order to hit that relevant button, Shakespeare, although he is dead, has to collaborate with the living. Living editors, living publishers, yes, but most importantly, living theatre makers.
In order to be relevant, in order to hit that relevant button, Shakespeare has to collaborate with the living editors, living publishers. Now keep that in mind. Donald Trump actually had a couple of Shakespearean moments the week I was preparing for this debate. He did an interview with CBS's Face the Nation. He was being questioned about his claims the Obama administration wiretapped him. CBS's John Dickerson asked him if he stands by calling Obama a bad and sick guy. President Trump said, "I stand by nothing." Now, this was the same week where Trump questioned why the Civil War happened and asserted that he could have done a deal to prevent it. John Meacham, he's a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, author, editor, and publisher. He used a scene from Shakespeare's play The Tempest to describe those wild interviews Trump had done that week. Here he is talking on conservative talk show Morning Joe.
You know, it's like the scene from The Tempest where Miranda comes out and says, "Oh, brave new world that has such people in it," and her father says, "'Tis new to thee."
400 years later, and Shakespeare's still being used as a reference in our political and social discourse, a place where Kanye West once became a household name.
George Bush doesn't care about black people.
Now there's another scene in another one of Shakespeare's plays called Richard III. In that play, in that scene, Gloucester says, "Now is the winter of our discontent." That enduring phrase sounds like a lot of Trump voters I know, people doing all the right things, following all the rules and still can't get ahead, who felt compelled to cast a ballot for the great unknown, rather than either of the two options that have continued to come up short over the past 40 years. The same can be said for Obama voters back in 2008. Sounds like the mindset of those in support of Brexit or people who supported Marine Le Pen. That quote sounds like those who participated in the Women's March, the Science March, Black Lives Matter, the Arab Spring, Occupy Wall Street. The housing crisis, the Great Recession was 10 years ago. Millions have been protesting ever since, whether on the red team or the blue team. Now is the winter of our discontent. We're still in the winter of our discontent. Almost every member of the proposition made some reference to how Kanye West used to speak out for the unheard. Ossian Ward, for example, he referenced the clip we played. George Bush doesn't care about black people. Most of us remember when Kanye West derided homophobia in hip-hop. This is before he got caught up with trillion-dollar water bottles and disrespectful multi-million-dollar Nike offers and not being able to hobnob with Hedy Slimane. That was the basis of my closing argument. Most of the things we champion Kanye West and his relevance for happened over a decade ago. Here's how it turned out. There's been a lot to talk about with Kanye West when we talk about how he used to stand up for things like George Bush doesn't care about black people. You could take Yeezus one way and it sounds like he's fighting the system. You take it the other way, it's a rich guy railing about fashion. Do we need another rich guy railing about fashion? We can listen to Pablo and we can think about You take the life of Pablo. I love to think of the life of Pablo as Kanye West returns. But if you listen to that album, really, it sounds like Kanye West really trying to find Kanye West. It even has a song called I Miss the Old Kanye West. I thought he was talking to us. Now I think he's kind of talking to himself. Point is this. Kanye West is one of the most important artists of our generation. He used to stand up for the principles that we care about most in life. But ever since he teamed up with Jay-Z and told us all to watch the throne while millions of people across the world lost their homes, he's been out of touch himself. So when I look around and I think about this conversation, as absurd as it is, let's entertain this. Kanye West, if anything, is like the internet. His influence is as widespread as the World Wide Web. He's as broad as broadband. Shakespeare is like oxygen. There's no way the internet is more relevant than oxygen. There is no way Kanye West is more relevant than Shakespeare. I think the real question is Kanye West as relevant as Kanye West used to be? Thank you. So that's how I wrapped. I was happy to get that off my chest. It's all happening. Now, the Oxford Union has a very unique way of voting. Audience members in attendance have a choice between two doors in which they can exit the hall. One says no's, one says yeses. Since for this outside-the-box debate, the House argued whether Kanye West is more relevant than William Shakespeare, all those people you see leaving through the no's exit agreed with our side. The tally was closer than it may seem in this B-roll, but we won. We did it. Brooklyn, we did it. Here's Alistair. Alistair's a member of the Oxford Union. It was my tour guide for the week. Here's his take on why William Shakespeare is more relevant than Kanye West. Listen to what he says.
I think taking a more nuanced approach was quite surprising, for me personally at least, to see the contrast between the old Kanye and the new Kanye in terms of relevance. I think if this debate had taken place immediately after Kanye had said that George Bush didn't care about black people, he would have won the debate on relevance, no questions asked. But with his new sort of more out-of-touch persona, it's much more up in the air, which I think is why we had quite a close debate result.
This is by far the biggest honor of my career. Just being in that room where so many luminaries spoke before me is humbling beyond belief and a reminder that the universe will take you places you never dreamed. All you gotta do is have faith and ride the wave. But what happens 400 years from now, 40 years from now, 4 years from now? Will William Shakespeare be as relevant in the future as he is today? Will Kanye West maintain his relevance against himself? Will the future be as kind to Mr. West as history has been to William Shakespeare? I don't have the answer to these questions. TBD episode number 1 in the books. Thank you guys for rocking with us. It's a brand new channel, brand new endeavors. Now, one thing that was important for me when I walked into that room is I wanted to impress upon everyone how great Kanye West really is. He's had an impact on my career personally from an inspiration standpoint, and I absolutely do believe he deserves to be in a conversation with William Shakespeare. At bare minimum, it's interesting, so great work, Matthew Cook, in cooking this one up. If you check out my argument, which is in the description, along with everyone else's argument who participated in this debate. If you check out my argument, you'll notice the first half of my argument is spent talking about how great Kanye West is. I truly believe that. Also, For you guys, do you think Kanye West is more relevant than William Shakespeare? It's a real question. Let us know in the comments section. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow @TheCompanyMan on everything. This is another piece to the paradigm. More to come. TBD.
Kanye is more relevant, but the basis comes from Shakespeare because he craved the pattern of all word process. Even look, Capulets, Rope, Montagues, that's Bloods and Crips in old school days. Do you get what I mean? Man wouldn't let my sister go out of a Peckham, you. Do you get what I mean? So